hard-pressed to find a more ideologically hardline industrialized nation than America. A country that boasts itself as the bastion of democracy and the arbitrator of human rights worldwide. We grow up here with a visceral disdain for certain groups and political factions that have shaped this country's history. And undoubtedly, fascism and Nazism are honed in throughout our education as the biggest threat to global peace. Studying Hitler's rise to power leaves the fear of God in every school child, who learns how quickly empires can be built and genocide executed with the right social conditioning. If there's one takeaway from even a rudimentary study of modern history, it's that Nazis were the effing worst. Yet what's never talked about is that the U.S. government swept up many of the Third Reich's most skilled scientists and put them to work right here in the U.S. of A. as part of a program known as Operation Paperclip. Yes, despite the ongoing prosecutions of high-profile Nazis, the U.S. and former Soviet Union seized the open market to recruit Nazis as security assets for the burgeoning Cold War. A whopping 1,600 Nazi war criminals, many of whom stood trial at Nuremberg, were provided safe harbor on American soil and allowed to live out the rest of their lives, absolved from accountability. But if you think that's horrific, turns out that the aiding and abetting of Nazis was far more extensive than once thought, involving 1,000 Nazis for intelligence purposes alone. Now, it's unclear whether or not these Nazi spies were part of Operation Paperclip, but keep in mind that nearly 2,000 Nazis were already documented to have been recruited in various agencies within the U.S. government. And according to an excerpt from New York Times reporter Eric Lichtblau's book, The Nazis Next Door: How America Became a Safe Haven for Hitler's Men, newly declassified material shows how the FBI and CIA went to great lengths to cover up the extent of Nazi infiltration for the last half-century. According to Lichtblau, in 1994, a lawyer with the CIA pressured prosecutors to drop an investigation into an ex-spy outside Boston implicated in the Nazis' massacre of tens of thousands of Jews in Lithuania. 60,000 deaths, to be exact. And the CIA not only blocked the investigation, they hired the man. In the 80s, the FBI thwarted another investigation launched by the DOJ to hunt down remaining Nazis when they knew about 16 Nazi informants were still living in the U.S., 5 of which were still active. One of them was an SS officer named Otto von Bolschwing, who served Hitler at the highest levels and penned policy papers on the, quote, final solution against Jews. See, according to FBI and CIA heads Hoover and Dulles, Nazis' usefulness against the Soviets trumped their ethical lapse in serving the Nazi regime. Moreover, Hoover even dismissed many accusations of their war crimes as, quote, Soviet propaganda. But as much as some agencies were dedicated to covering up and protecting the Nazi criminals they recruited, others were committed to expelling Nazis from the states. See, the Department of Justice had launched a Nazi hunting program under the Office of Special Investigations in 1979, responsible for classifying, denaturalizing, and expelling Nazis from the U.S. In 2006, the OSI bragged about its success in deporting Nazis, claiming to have done more in the previous 25 years than all other countries combined. And although that sounds great on paper, there was a hidden tactic they used to get the Nazis out, one that's been shrouded from public knowledge until now. According to AP documents, suspected Nazi war criminals collected millions of dollars in Social Security payments after leaving the country, and did until the day they died. A handful of Nazis are still sitting pretty, collecting hard-earned American tax dollars to this day. It was justified then as leverage in order to persuade Nazis to leave voluntarily while keeping their retirement benefits and avoiding the legal wrangling of deportation. The DOJ officially denies using the method of essentially bribing Nazis to leave, but according to FOIA requests obtained by the AP, at least 38 kept their benefits, amounting to millions of dollars. The beneficiaries included SS troops and guards who worked inside Nazi camps where millions of Jews died. One guard in particular took part in eradicating one ghetto that executed as many as 13,000 Jews. Unfortunately, efforts to close this bizarre tactic have been blocked over the last decade from various groups, including, shocker, the DOJ itself. According to Talking Points memo, former OSI Director Neil Schur said that the State Department put a higher priority on diplomatic niceties than holding former members of Adolf Hitler's war machine accountable. State always wraps itself in the flag. Unfortunately, it's not the American flag. Now, there are plans on introducing legislation to close the loophole once and for all. But with only about 4 remaining Nazis living off retirement benefits in 2014, the point seems moot. So, by all means, the evils and horrors of the Nazi regime should continue to be taught in history class. But until we come to terms with how this country recruited, protected, and still pay Nazis, the legacy and crimes of World War II will never be truly exposed.